This is the inaugural speech of the Honourable Lauren Cayoun. The usual courtesies and conventions of the Chamber apply. The Honourable Lauren Cayoun.
Thank you. I begin by acknowledging traditional owners from across Western Australia, but particularly the Whadjuk people of the proud Noongar Nation. And I offer my congratulations to you, President, on your re-election as President of this place. Thank you for so warmly welcoming other new members and for helping us to feel slightly less terrified. To be elected as a Member of Parliament representing the greatest state and the greatest country on earth is an honour like no other. WA has always been my home. I enjoyed a pretty idyllic WA childhood in suburban Belmont, roaming the streets until dusk with gangs of neighbourhood kids, riding our bikes down to the beautiful Swan River at Cracknell Park in Rivervale, and falling asleep to the gentle roar of aircrafts overhead. I spent countless school holidays in Augusta with my grandparents Frank and Elsie Price, watching Grandad feed the magpies on their bush block and fishing with Nana on the Blackwood River. Camping holidays up to Nanga Station, Exmouth and Karratha, with my mum often remarking that we had the whole camping ground to ourselves, possibly because it was January and no one else was keen to camp in 45-degree heat. From snorkelling at Coral Bay, lunches at the Wim Creek Hotel, helping baby turtles reach the water on the beaches near Wickham, trawling for prawns in the Swan River on hot summer nights, and going to Perth Glory games with Dad back when the shed was still the hill. I've been blessed to have a truly West Australian upbringing. WA is home, and I know firsthand that there is no better place in the world to live, work and to raise a family. My mum Judy is a born and bred West Australian. While serving abroad in the Australian Army in World War I, her grandfather met her grandmother in London, and he convinced her to join him in WA, impressing her greatly when he told her that both of his parents were in banking. She later found out that they were the night cleaners at the Commonwealth Bank in Perth. After the war, they established themselves on farmland given to returning soldiers near Morawa, and there they raised their young family in a tent, later making the move to Perth. 5 generations of my mum's family have called Belmont home, from a time when it was a mixture of paddocks and cheap post-war housing backing onto bush, to the bustling inner east community that I call home today. My dad Guy came to Australia from France in the late 1970s. His parents were born in Algeria, escaping to France during the Algerian War when it reinstated the right to citizenship for Algerian Jews following World War II. They lived in Paris, where my dad grew up in a family of 10 children in a very small apartment. In his early 20s, my dad left France to travel, and after a chance encounter with my mum on a kibbutz in northern Israel, he moved to Australia for love. He took his oath at the Oath of Citizenship at the Belmont Council, where some 30 years later he watched me take an oath to serve as a City of Belmont councillor. From my mum, I have a proud WA history, and from my dad, I'm a child of the world. But from them both, I've inherited a deep love of travel. I regularly visit my family in France and the UK, and my dear Uncle Richard in Vietnam, who I believe is watching today, no doubt preparing to sledge me via WhatsApp for my appalling left-wing politics. Hello, Uncle Richard. But my favourite place to visit my family is Israel, the country that dozens of aunties, uncles and cousins call home. There is something about visiting Israel that I feel deep within. Its holy sites and its time-worn streets tell the stories of our shared human history, that the world's most persecuted people could, after such a suffering, build a thriving and modern democratic state where they could speak their language, practice their culture, and watch their children grow old, stands as an example of the power and resilience of the human spirit. I felt a yearning to travel from when I was very young. So just before my 18th birthday, I packed up my very few belongings and I headed north to Darwin to study nursing at the then Northern Territory University. My school friends thought I was mad. In hindsight, they were absolutely right. The top end will always hold a very special place in my heart, Darwin in particular. It's a magnificent city that's changed a lot over the decades, but back in the early 2000s, it truly felt like a frontier town. I'd lived a pretty sheltered life. So as a young nursing student, I was forced to learn some tough lessons very quickly. I suddenly found myself confronted with some of the harsh realities of life for Aboriginal people in remote parts of Australia. Poor access to health services and schools, extreme poverty, and the challenges of raising kids to walk with confidence in what could seem like two worlds. I worked for a period at an aged care facility for Aboriginal people, the majority of whom spoke little or no English, having spent most of their lives in Arnhem Land. The centre was underfunded and under-resourced, the staff underpaid, and the patients had little or no possessions and were rarely visited by family who found it near impossible to regularly travel the hundreds of kilometres to the city. These patients had found themselves in the city for their final years, often lonely, hooked up to dialysis machines or similar, and surrounded by strangers. Even something as simple as a basic conversation about their care needs was often impossible. And the cultural clash was very stark. Just across the road was the Purat Village Markets, a tourist attraction and cultural melting pot of food, performances, art and more. The magnificent multicultural tropical lifestyle of the Territory on full display. Two very different faces of Territory life side by side. There are many parallels here with parts of WA, particularly in our north. Extremes of poverty and wealth in the same community. Opportunity abounding, but too often reserved for a lucky handful. And some of the starkest examples of that most unfair and unjust gap that persists between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Australia. I'll always carry the lessons of my short time in the top end with me. Lessons and experiences that have given me a great love for our many Aboriginal cultures and a sincere respect for the resilience, perseverance and unique perspectives of our first Australians. If I can use my time in this place to play even a small role in creating more opportunity for WA's Aboriginal communities, I'll know I've spent my time wisely. I enjoyed my time as a student nurse, but I found myself struck by the challenges faced by patients when they left a healthcare setting and the inequalities and hardships which meant they'd likely soon return. Deciding that social work was a better fit for me and missing home, I applied to Curtin Uni for the following year. I just turned 20 and in so many ways I was very young for my years. The day that I received the letter in the post saying I'd been accepted to Curtin was the day I found out I was pregnant. I was thousands of kilometres from family, working part-time at Woolies. My bank account was very frequently in arrears and my car was on the verge of blowing up, and I knew absolutely nothing about raising a baby. And I remember being scared to tell my parents back in Perth. They'd worked hard to give me an education and I knew that they dreamed big for me, wanting me to travel the world and revel in all the wonderful freedoms of youth. But after the initial shock wore off, Mum and Dad were nothing but supportive, and such they've stayed for the almost 20 years since my daughter Isabel was born. The best thing that ever happened to me. Being a single parent is tough and often lonely. In those early years, I studied full-time at Curtin to get my degree while working 2 jobs in retail and disability care to make ends meet. I stayed up late finishing assignments so that I could work as many hours as possible during the day. There were countless days where I dropped my toddler off at daycare early in the morning and picked her up after dark. With a couple of exceptions, I lost most of my school friends. They were young and carefree, and I was not. It was tough, but I know that I had it so much easier than most because of the generosity and sacrifices of my parents. I moved back in with Mum and Dad when Isabel was just a baby. They literally put a roof over our heads until I could afford to do so myself. When I needed help with school runs, karate, and football pickups and drop-offs, they were there. Later, when I took an interest in local politics and ran for council, they were nothing but supportive. Long nights in the council chamber at the City of Belmont were only possible because I knew my daughter was at home with Mum and Dad, being fed, bathed and read a bedtime story. I have no doubt that I wouldn't be standing in this place today without them. Along my path from that scared kid in Darwin to the person that I've become today, Mum and Dad made sure that I've never felt alone. I've never had to say no to opportunity. I've never had to suppress my ambition, and that my daughter has never suffered for my shortcomings as a parent. I thank them sincerely from the bottom of my heart. Whatever I may achieve in this place and beyond is your achievement too. Throughout my time in the workforce, I've had a great many single-parent colleagues, and while it may be some bias talking, I found them to be among the hardest workers that I've ever come across, able to juggle tasks, manage time, create efficiencies, and demonstrate great resilience in times of stress. Wherever possible in this place, I'll be a fierce advocate for single-parent families, acknowledging the unique challenges that they face in raising young Australians. While I've been blessed as a parent, my friends often tease me about being unlucky in love, but how wrong they are. The year was 2007. The talk of the Curtin Uni campus was the looming federal election. In the momentum of Kevin 07, I decided to join the ALP, and in doing so I found what was to become the great love of my life, the Australian Labor movement. What really got me all those years ago wasn't the star power of Kevin Rudd, the catchy slogans, the exciting possibilities of change. It was the warning of the Your Rights at Work campaign, the threat of work choices, the capacity for those laws to fundamentally change the foundations of working Australia forever, foundations that generations before me had fought so hard to establish. It shook me, and during that moment, it was the union movement who reached out through our TV screens and through our radios, urging us to fight for what was ours. As a single mum to a toddler working 2 low-paid jobs and as daughter to a union man, I already knew that what little job security I had I owed to the union movement. So from uni, I went to work as an industrial officer at the ASU alongside great trade unionists like Sue Pethick, Wayne Wood and Pat Branson. There I had the opportunity to contribute to Australia's first equal pay case, using a section of the new Fair Work Act, which recognised gender pay-based deficiencies. The union won award increases of more than 40% for low-paid social and community service workers, like youth workers, domestic violence counsellors and crisis accommodation workers. I can't begin to describe how much this meant to the people who I'd studied alongside at uni, studying social work. Hard-working professionals who had honed important and specialised skills, still not even earning enough to begin paying off their HECS debts. The union's fight meant that these workers didn't have to choose between a career they loved and financial security, and it meant that the industry could hold on to valuable skills. This is the power of a strong union working with a strong Labor government to make positive and lasting change for working Australians. I'd like to speak about the Australian Workers' Union, of which I'm a proud member, but before I do, I'll tell you a little about a typical WA family in the late 90s and early 2000s, my own. Growing up, I never felt we were poor, but on reflection, I know life wasn't easy for Mum and Dad. Dad a sparky and Mum a homemaker. They worked hard to pay the mortgage and meet the costs of raising 3 young kids. They owned a single car, there were lots of vegetarian meals, and school uniforms and toys were often second-hand. When I was a teenager, Dad started FIFO work on mine sites in the Pilbara, and Mum soon followed, working in admin roles. They'd spend weeks away from family, living in dongers without the comforts of home, and I know they spent long, hot days toiling in the heat and the dust. The work was hard and the sacrifice was great, but so was the reward. In what seemed like a short time, life of my family began to change. First it was the little things, more mod cons around the house, better fishing rods, new school uniforms, then a better car, a better school, eventually an investment property, and overseas holidays. We often hear the mining industry talked about as the engine room of our economy, and it is. One look at the Perth skyline and the bright lights of Woodside, BHP and Rio Tinto will tell you that we're a mining state. We hear about big profits and the scale of the wealth generated for WA, but for my family and many others, mining is so much more. It's the industry that allowed them to create a better life with more security and more dignity, that rewarded their hard work and contribution to WA's prosperity, and that in so many cases lifted WA families out of poverty. It's the industry that's delivered true economic justice for so many working families across WA. But of course that justice doesn't just happen, and it hasn't sprung from generosity or even duty. It's something that workers have fought hard to win and maintain over generations. The Australian Workers' Union, of which I'm a proud member, stands shoulder to shoulder with workers in our mining industry. This includes workers in iron ore, gold, nickel and lithium, and other workers that the industry relies on to keep it ticking, like mine site village cooks and caterers, cleaners, housekeepers and maintenance workers. It covers workers in aluminium mining and refining and in the oil and gas industry. The AWU stands with these workers to make sure they get a slice of the pie, a slice that properly reflects their critical work towards our state and national economies. I also acknowledge workers in other AW industries, including agriculture, food processing, meatwork, shearing and wool classing, in civil construction like roadworks, bridges and traffic control, in manufacturing glass, steel and timber. The AWU is a strong and moderate trade union, understanding the benefits that come from productive relationships with employers, but always working towards fairer rights at work. As one of my great political idols and former National Secretary of the AWU, Bill Shorten, recently said in his valedictory speech, the right of workers to organise for fair wages and decent conditions must move in concert with the imperative for employers to create the wealth that pays fair wages. A moderate union, the AWU understands this. In our modern world, work changes constantly, and unions like the AWU know how to keep pace with that change. Recently at the union's national conference held here in WA for the first time in the union's more than 130-year history, I heard delegates and organisers from the offshore oil and gas industry talking about moves by their employer to restrict the times they could access their annual leave to their off swings. This is akin to telling a Monday to Friday worker that they can only take annual leave on the weekend. Modern problems like this require action from modern trade unions like the AWU. When the WA Labor Party was formed at a trade union congress in Coolgardie back in 1899, it did so with a goal in mind: to represent the interests of working people in Parliament. All those years ago, those men understood that it wasn't enough for working people to have strong representation at a workplace level. That was only the first step. They needed strong representation in Parliament to have their say on the issues that impacted them and to shape the future so desired by the working majority. More than 100 years later, Labor members of Parliament, supported by our friends in the trade union movement, come to this place with that same goal: to represent the interests of working people, bring their values to this place and make decisions with those values front of mind. While working in Mark McGowan's office during the COVID years, I saw firsthand what this looks like in practice. I'll always remember the urgency, the pace of change, the horrifying worst-case scenarios we were faced with. But what I will remember most is the way that the values of the people around the decision-making table directly informed our response to the pandemic. As a Labor government, our focus was not just about protecting people's lives, but also, crucially, protecting their livelihoods, to make sure that through the pandemic and when we came out the other end, people had the opportunity for meaningful work in a healthy economy. It was a true honour to work as a political staffer in government, especially during the pandemic. I saw firsthand the vast network of committed and dedicated staffers that kept government going, from the public service through to ministerial offices. The pandemic years brought out the best in so many of them and showed what a compassionate, caring and brave government can do with a dedicated machine of staffers underpinning it. I saw so many give up countless hours with their families at a time of anxiety and uncertainty to do their duty. They're all great Western Australians, but I particularly acknowledge the work of Premier's Office legends Guy Houston, Joe Gaines, Kieran Murphy, Mark Reid, Stacey Hearn, Patrick Ashforth, Jasmine Williamson and Sarah Keegan. It was an honour to work alongside you. I recall an event I attended with Kim Beazley some years ago, where he was reflecting on his time as Australia's ambassador to the US. Someone asked him what the biggest difference was between Australian and US politics. And he said this: while the most fundamental value underpinning America's politics is freedom, Australia's is fairness. In my time in politics and life, I've come to learn that what people want most for their families and their communities is a fair go. It's as simple as that. And by extension, what they expect from their politicians is that we discharge our duties in a way that's fair. Because Western Australians are a fair bunch. We're people who want good quality, well-paid, stable jobs, decent schools for our kids, affordable TAFEs to give them the skills they need to undertake meaningful work. A government that understands the importance of a strong safety net to support those who can't support themselves. A government that's sensible, responsible and disciplined in a way that it spends their money. a government that's measured and mainstream, one that rejects the extreme left and the extreme right and is moderate in how it governs, but one that is ambitious for WA and its people. A government that puts economic justice for working people at the heart of all it does. That's what true fairness looks like, and these are the principles on which I plan to base my time here. Fairness, compassion, and an unshakable respect for the importance of dignified and meaningful work. Before I conclude, a few thank yous. First and foremost, of course, to the people of WA for placing their trust in me. The honour and the privilege is not lost on me. To my friends in local government across WA, it was an honour to serve as West Ward Councillor for 8 years, the community that raised me, and to learn from so many excellent councillors and officers across the sector. Being involved in local government can be thankless work, but I thank you here. The work you do literally changes lives. You taught me important lessons about representing people on the sorts of everyday issues that affect them: neighbourhood development, crime prevention, planning, and of course roads, rates and rubbish. I thank Mark Elliott, John Gangel, John Christie, Peter Feasey, and others who've served in local government and since found their way to Parliament, like John Carey, Stephen Pratt, David Michael and others. And of course my good friend Robert Rossi, the first popularly elected Belmont Mayor. I thank him for his support and friendship throughout the years. As a proud Bellafornian, it's fantastic to see someone with such energy and heart leading our community. To the membership of the WA Labor Party, it's been an honour to serve as your Assistant State Secretary for the past 3 years. Being a party official was a job like no other. Yes, the campaigning, the research and the strategy were fascinating and fun, but nothing compared to the very humbling trust that you placed in me to be an official and custodian of the great WA Labor Party and our proud traditions. Those of us fortunate to be party officials and politicians may be more visible, but we are not more important than the rank and file members that comprise our great party. The work they do, turning up to build the party and contest elections in the good times and the bad, is what makes Labor governments possible in the first place. I'll never forget that. To Premier Roger Cook, on the 8th of March, Western Australians made it clear that your leadership and the plan you put forward for a stronger WA is a plan they wholeheartedly endorse. It'll be an honour to serve as a member of your government, making sure we keep WA strong, deliver cost of living relief for Western Australians, and build a future where we manufacture more things here in WA. To State Secretary Ellie Whittaker, it's been a pleasure to work with you and win with you. You've been an outstanding leader for our movement, and I'm so proud of our many achievements together: winning elections, setting up the party's financial future, and purchasing our forever home on Havelock Street. I know you'll be a fierce advocate for our state as Senator for Western Australia. To the party office team, in my view, the best and strongest party office of all time, you guys are all legends, but a special shout out to the local campaigns team: Ali White, Gareth Thomas, Ebony Short, Mark Fay, Brock Oswald and Danny Samados. Because of your work and passion, WA Labor can truly claim the crown of being the best campaigning outfit in the nation. Thank you to Progressive Labor for your support and guidance. To Brad Gandy, Ben Harris, Tim Dawson and Mick Buchan, I'm sincerely grateful. And to my Labor family, too many of you to mention, but I can't pass up the moment to thank a few in particular. Ali White, Claire Comrie, Caitlin Collins, Gareth Thomas, Mark Reid, Rebecca Stevens, Tom Byer, Craig Dunn, Mark Elliott, Mitchell Goff, John Mann, Marilyn Osegovich, Harry Burrows, Kat Milbrandt, Varun Ghosh, Hannah Beasley and Sue Pethick. We have a joke at party office that each of us has an emotional support MP. I thank Matt Cayoun for serving his time as my emotional support MP with great distinction. Matt, you're a true friend and mentor. Through the good times, the bad times and the downright weird times, these people have been an endless source of fun and support, and I thank them sincerely. Now, they say there's no such thing as friends in politics, but whoever they are must not know Adelaide Kidson or Matt Dixon. Two excellent political strategists, outstanding campaigners, committed unionists, but even better mates. Adelaide, I'm so glad you joined Matt and I in the best club with the worst acronym, the Assistant State Secretaries Club. You both know I could not have done this without you, and I thank you deeply. Thank you to my dad. You raised us kids to think critically, test our opinions, debate ferociously, and learn as many capital cities as possible. And Mum, you raised us to work hard. No one I know has a stronger work ethic than you, and to be kind, compassionate and communitarian. My siblings, Jessica and Yannick, thank you for your support, for the important job of taking me down a peg or two from time to time, and for teaching me valuable early lessons about how factions work. And my daughter Isabel, my roommate and best friend, I've loved watching you find your place in the world. Thank you for putting up with me and putting the bins out every week when I forget. You're the best baker in the family and the second best campaigner. Our movement is the richer for having young people like you involved. Also, on a personal note, I love you. My final thank you goes to my union family, the mighty Australian Workers' Union, to my dear friend Brad Gandy, to Paul Farrow, Craig Beveridge, Andy Hacking, and the rest of the A-dubs. The honour of representing the values of our members here is not lost on me. It is from our members that I have learned the most important lesson of them all, that we are truly stronger together. Thank you.
So good. So good. Well
Touch it.
Harry turns.
Don't touch it.
Oh, yes.